Aloha and welcome to Goddess Unleashed. This is Diane Vick, and on this episode, I'm interviewing another guest from the Crappy to Happy series, another author, Dom Brightmon. And he has an interesting story that I want him to share. But first off, Dom, let's introduce yourself. Show them all your nice energy.
Oh, yes, indeed. All the energy, let it all radiate. That's right. Radiate the brain and change the game, as some say. And thanks a bunch, Diane, for having me on your wonderful show, Goddess Unleashed. It's good to let a emperor on the show. I'm not going to say God because, some people may take that the wrong way, but it's definitely be here with you among the other goddesses listening. And for those who don't know me, I'm Dominic Dom Brightmon from the land of charm, crime, and crab cakes known as Baltimore, Maryland. And my life motto is advance others to advance yourself. And really, I'm just here because it's a great opportunity to be with you and all the other fabulous authors sharing our stories of really moments that where we felt like they were crap, but you know what? We turned them around and made them happy moments because you know what? It's better to be happy instead of crappy. And when you're feeling crappy, you can turn that crap around and turn it into a crab and then probably throw it in a stew or something.
Oh, Dom, you always make me laugh. I can't wait till I appear on your show, which actually happens after this one, so it's kind of funny. But I appear on your show on October 8th, and if any one of my listeners want to go check that out, then check it out because by the time you hear this, it will have already aired. But I definitely want to jump into something that I think all the authors resonate with, and your story and mine definitely do too, is that obstacles and challenges are actually an opportunity for us to evolve and grow into better versions of ourselves. And I know that there was this phrase that you used in yours that I want you to explain a little bit more. Some gifts are wrapped in adversity. Tell them what that means to you.
Ah, yes, some gifts are wrapped in adversity. It's kind of like the rose with thorns. In this case, when you open up your gift for Christmas, you have to go through like a nice little firewalk of Lego bricks. And then when you finally get to your gift, it's wrapped up in barbed wire and there's a rubber ducky on top that's talking and taunting you. And once you get past the rubber ducky, the barbed wire, the Lego bricks, and the firewalk, you open your gift and realize you have a lesson that came from an actual loss because there's this classic phrase, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And really that chapter title came from a classic year known as 2012, where we thought that the world was going to end, but all that really happened is that we didn't have Twinkies for a month and got into this car accident on my 21st birthday. And that's actually been one of the best gifts of my life. Like some folks talk about how they go to prison and they get to that moment of silence and they go through that struggle and they come out saying, man, prison was the best thing that happened to me. Well, I'm glad I cannot say that. I'm glad a car accident that I walked out alive out of was actually one of the best gifts given to me, because really that day was what helped me to have a paradigm shift to actually get closer and closer to doing some more self-development. And one of those self-development keys was through reading. And funny enough, up to that point, I had a part-time job at a library 5 years up to that point. And I didn't love reading that much because I'm pretty sure you remember, Diane, when you may have gone through school and they give you books that you don't want to read. I remember reading one book and page 2, I just fell straight asleep. I was just passed out. And next thing I knew, it was 10 p.m. on a Saturday night. And I'm like, I came to and I'm like, oh, crap, I ain't finished this book. So really just having that moment of getting into a car accident and then on top of that, a couple weeks later being called in by my boss and her telling me like, hey, you got to shape up here because in a couple weeks it's going to be another school season and all these other new employees are coming in. She had like 3 or 4 new employees coming in, and folks are going to be looking at me as a leader because I've been there up to 5 years at that point. And to make it even worse, the adversity tree really has a lot of fruit because before the meeting, before the car crash, a month earlier, my father, he went out for a drive and he got lost all the way out into a place called Silver Spring, Maryland, about a good 30 miles away from Baltimore. And we never go to Silver Spring. And he got lost that day. And once we put out a silver alert for him, since he had gray hair and everything, he was found. They admitted him to a hospital. We got to the hospital and they found out he had Alzheimer's. And we were like, oh man, because the signs were there. like the low memory and everything. But hey, as we all age, like the memory isn't always up to par where it should be. But if your memory's so bad that you drive 45 minutes outside of your regular territory when you usually go to a grocery store to get groceries or just talk to a couple friends or whatever, then that's really going to be a red flag, especially since they caught him driving on the wrong side of the road to boot. So his life was spared that day, and a whole new life of caregiving really just opened up after that. And I became part-time caregiver on top of full-time college student, on top of part-time library assistant. So it was really heck of an adversity that led to me realizing that, hey, maybe I should become a better leader. And I went to a leadership section at the library, picked up a book on leadership by John Maxwell, read that book, changed my life, and became more of a optimist and a more positive thinker. Because even though folks have known me as an optimist, I wasn't as strong. It wasn't rock solid because all the stuff was piling up on me. And I was able to see this caregiving piece as a gift because it helped me to realize that there were still more layers to my father that I haven't seen before he was stricken with Alzheimer's. And the even more deeper into that was seeing the love that my parents had for each other because they were together for 57 years. And those last 6 years were really telling how much they truly were dedicated to one another because there'd be times when mom, she was sick before this happened, and there'd be times where she'd be clawing to get towards him because she had heart trouble on top of other things. And my father was sick and we had to change nursing homes and things. And the parking spaces for this certain nursing home, they were all handicap spaces. They had to walk probably a good half a mile after getting a good parking space to get there. So getting a handicap tag and not being able to walk too long on her own and really just caring for her loved one and just seeing that dedication, that really is an example to folks nowadays that are looking for love, to making sure that you have that person that really cares about you, especially when it comes to the aging piece. So really, yeah, gifts are wrapped up in adversity. Like it hopefully it doesn't take a car accident for someone to find personal development. Hopefully it doesn't take that meeting with the boss to really get to that point, even though I'm pretty sure we've all had that at least once in our lives in the land of employment. But really just seeing those moments, those setbacks, as really just a launch pad for growth and just making you change your perspective. Because sometimes you just have to have a little change of perspective and find the good moments in the bad moments.
Absolutely. It's all a process. So we all usually hit rock bottom at some point, whether it's a car accident for you or for me a health crisis or maybe a family illness because you've experienced that as well. And that gives us an opportunity to start evolving and peeling up. My story is like peeling away the pieces of that onion and finding the new gifts and understanding that you got to work through these emotions, and we become positive people because we choose to make that choice for ourselves. We took that step for ourselves, and that really is the first step for anyone that wants to change their life, is to begin to make that effort for themselves and go find books like you did and get out of that box, out of that normal cycle. So thank you for sharing that. I think that that's beautiful. I know that Alzheimer's is one of the most difficult diseases for the families. I've experienced it with friends that had grandparents with Alzheimer's, an uncle that had Alzheimer's. Tell us a little bit about that experience and how it was an emotional experience for the whole family and how you got through it.
Oh yeah, it was one heck of an emotional experience because not only was it gradual decay and a gradual grief, even after the grief happened, still was prepared for it. Like that, anyone going through Alzheimer's right now, you can have anticipatory grief, and it may help, but at the end of the day, it still won't. So, kind of, kind of a downer, but just some words of wisdom from my experience, because we all deal with grief in different ways, and that might even be better for folks. But really, that experience had helped me to learn more about my father and more of his time in service, because growing up, I knew that my father actually spent time in the service. He actually had two combat jumps as an 82nd Division Airborne paratrooper, and he actually fought in World War II. I didn't even know about the World War II piece because he actually served 12 years total in service. He spent time in as both a paratrooper and in the Army, and he actually got a bunch of service stars and was a decorated official a decorated officer. And his DD-214 was so darn old, it still had Negroid listed on the DD-214. And that just
Wow.
showed how archaic it was. And it forced us to really seek out veterans benefits. So anyone who may have a loved one and they may have had time in service, if you haven't yet, really tap into those resources right now, because it took us a whole year to get some benefits in right after we found all this paperwork and got it through, because the VA is, oh my God, especially, I'm not even sure now, it's probably even more hellacious now with COVID, but really just finding that paperwork, getting it in, and trying to get as many benefits as you can for your loved one, taking care of them. Because with them, we're able to get some extra equipment, like a nice chair for the shower when we're giving them baths, so it'll be easier for them, a special chair for them to sit in, heck, even extra medical benefits, because it wasn't until he lost almost all of his memory that we tapped into those resources, because he was a bus driver too after his time in service for a good 35 years. So he had benefits from that job, but we just wanted to get as many benefits for him as possible since he served the country and he's owed those benefits. So seek him as much as possible and find the humor too in the moments. And if you can, like, take breaks whenever possible, because both my mother, myself, and an older brother, mine, we all had to take turns when it came to doctor's appointments. Sometimes after the appointment was over, I'd make sure I drive a little longer so mom would have a longer break to get a nap and other things, because there would be times when he would sundown. Like while we're trying to go to sleep, he's wide awake, creeping through the house looking for something. We don't know what he's looking for and scaring the living daylights out of us, and really just dealing with that. And when you wake up later, because funny enough, there's this one time, it was hilarious. He had one of them darn sundown experiences. He thought I was basically a, a little farmer boy trying to keep him away from poisonous watermelons one time. That's how crazy his memory was and the way his head was working. And I was basically his height with a good 30 extra pounds of muscle compared to him. And he thought I was some little boy trying to keep him from poisonous watermelons. So really just helping him get to bed and really just talking with him, listening to him, and just really going with the flow as much as possible and switching out, tag teaming out with the other family members, because really that's just moments like that where you just have to really find the humor in any situation to make it go a little easier, get the benefits as much as you can for your loved one if they had time in service, and to also keep self-care in mind, like that, and make sure you're around the right people. Because my mother in church, she would hear it every now and then. It's like, hey, you better be careful. It's usually the caregiver that's the first to go as opposed to the one that they're taking care of. Just to hear that all the time. And it's been around 3 years since the time of this recording, where she's now 80 and she has lost so much weight, and she hasn't been this light since probably her 30s and 20s. So just basically taking it in stride, making sure you're around people that truly care about you, and making sure that you hear the right things while you're taking care of a loved one, and pay some of the naysayers no mind, and trying to really just be as strong as possible for not only your loved one, but also yourself.
No, absolutely. I think the support system is essential. And even if people aren't dealing with someone that has a chronic illness, I think in order to set yourself up to be able to evolve into something else, you need the same thing. You need a support system. You need people that bring you up, not people that push you down. And that's part of creating boundaries for yourself, and separating yourself from those people that make you feel uncomfortable and make you feel less than what you can be. So I think it's great that your mom has achieved so much even through that grief and that loss that was so hard on you guys as a family.
Oh yeah.
There's a quote, there's a quote that you shared about mom, and she must have said this quote a long time ago. So I want you to tell them what this means to you. God God has big plans for you.
Oh yeah, that's right. God has big plans for you. God has big plans for you. Bigger than any elephant, bigger than any continent. That's right, big plans. And that really was a few years ago, back on the day of the accident, because I was still shell shocked. Even though I had no physical injuries, I was still mentally shocked. That actually crashed the car on my 21st birthday, no less. I thought I was going to be having a day full of fun and excitement after getting done with IT class, and out of nowhere, crash a car, and then really just being shell shocked and saw my head was down. It was probably about a good 5 hours after the fact. And she told me to shape up and told me that God has big plans for you because you're still here. Because I couldn't drive the car afterwards for a good 2 months, and she still had her old hoopty from like 97. It was probably about a good 13 years old, and it still got her from point A to point B. It helped me to get from point A to point B. And she said that to really shake me out. And we always need that kind word, because if one good person sees something good in you, you can run for a lifetime. And that's also goes with the fact that two heads better than one is better to have another person that's an encourager, because we all get down on ourselves. No matter how great of a motivator we may feel that we are on our own, we have to motivate ourselves. And even sometimes motivating yourself isn't always going to work. You always need that other voice. There's always going to be another voice that's really going to be in your head subconsciously, especially if you channel from your childhood. And her just telling me that really encouraged me. And that led to me actually being able to get back out of that and not only be a part of this book, but publish 2 other books and just talking with wonderful folks like yourself and all over the world. And it's just only the tip of the iceberg. So there's no telling what else God has planned for me and those that truly take advantage of the gifts that they have been given.
Absolutely. And it seems like her little quote set you in the direction to find your path. And you know, the story's still not written. There's still so many other things to be written into your story. One of the things that I talk about a lot on my show is how all diseases that develop in the body have 2 components. So there's the physical stress that happens in our body, our genetic predispositions, and then there's the emotional stress that we experience in life. And I'm sure that your dad experienced a lot of stress going through the war in that time when there was so much racism and they were treated unjustly. And a lot of that stress has to have taken part in part of how he develops his disease. So I think it's important for you to remember that in your journey, to make sure that you give yourself those supportive things for yourself so that you evolve and work through anything that you may be experiencing. Because when we synergistically work on the 2 things, that physical inflammation that happens, and then working on the emotional, which is the boosting up, the getting, you know, people that pep up your step, and motivators and coaches and all this stuff, is really when we are able to live the life we dream, but also have that healthier body. So I do invite you to notice that if anything comes up in the future. Now, I wanted to go back into how helping others is such a gift, because I think for me, it's such a gift to help people. When I see them get healthier, it just brings so much joy into my life, seeing how I've changed others. How does that experience affect you?
It's a great experience indeed. And I'm pretty sure you're living testament to that yourself with all the work that you're doing, helping women become badasses indeed. So with really my experience, it's been one hell of a great experience, because I've learned that really the best thing to do is really help people that need help. And if you help someone else, you'll feel good in return, because in lighting other candles, your candle doesn't get any dimmer. And really, we're all metaphorical candles, and we all get to light each other up in a good way. Now, if you light someone up and they become a metaphorical giant blunt of weed and they do something stupid, that's a whole nother situation. But that's not what I'm referring to here, but really just helping folks out. Like, hey, if someone dropped their money, just giving them back their money. Heck, you remember one time going in a grocery store with my older brother, this homeless guy, he dropped a dime, and we both looked at each other, made eye contact, me and the homeless guy, and then he threatened to cut me if I tried to rob him. I'm like, what the hell am I going to rob you for? And I just still went to the ground, picked up a dime and gave it to him. And then he just rushed in and just gave me a big old hug because I handed him his money back. And just little moments like that just basically reassured for me that little gestures count. Like there may be big time philanthropists just donating millions and billions of dollars to all these wonderful nonprofits to help other people. It doesn't have to be that big. Like a kind gesture, like a smile, a kind word, a hug once we get out of this COVID crap, of course. And really just little things like that can help you out. Heck, even remember one time, it was at the end of a Toastmasters meeting, and this was the year after I was done being a president of a club. And the new officers were in. These two ladies were talking. They were asking me for my feedback about something. I gave them the feedback, and they weren't even paying attention to the feedback I gave them. And I felt a little certain kind of way after that, because it's like, I'm offering you help here. I'm still kind of a fresh face here. I still got some wealth of knowledge here. Like, just because you're 3+ decades ahead of me doesn't mean that I don't have something to offer here. And after that meeting, I got a text message from another member who saw the moment, and she was like, "Hey, Dom, I enjoy seeing you at the meetings. Thanks for being a positive face." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." So people notice certain moments when you may be down or may have had something unfair done to you. It may not be at a bigger level nowadays of what you may see on the media, but just little things matter. And helping people is one of the best things ever. And you get to help yourself in the process, because if you help enough people get what they want, you'll eventually get what you want, especially if it's something that wasn't even on your radar.
I agree. And that actually made me think of something. So now I'm working remotely from home, but when I was in the hospital, we were very close to the chapel. And I remember there was always this lady who had to go through all of these doors, and she was a little bit handicapped, and she needed a little help. Somehow I ended up being there to open the doors for her. And it was like the smile on her face and the conversation that came after it was something that I absolutely didn't expect. I didn't expect her to even say thank you, because a lot of people in Miami don't even say thank you for things. But when she did, and we had this conversation, and she was so thankful that all I did was open the door for her. You really see how one little thing can change someone's day and bring a smile to their face. So I think there is a lot of value in doing those little things, because the little things add up to something big for someone. You never know what they're going through in that day, and maybe they just needed a smiling face to open the door or pick up a penny.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Doesn't have to be a shiny one either.
No, any little gesture helps. But before we wrap up, because we have about 2 minutes, I know you have 2 books. You want to let them know about your books?
Sure thing. The first one's called Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself. And the follow-up book to that is Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. So feel free to try to say those 7 times fast for his tongue twister. Those are 2 self-help books under 100 pages. That's really inspirational, motivational, because people don't have time for 200 pages. So if you want to advance in your career, if you want to create and develop a positive mental attitude that's rock solid, and to maintain that level of performance and have a higher level of self-awareness, pick up those 2 magical books after picking up 5,000 copies of Crappy to Happy.
Absolutely. I think they need to check out that book, because there's so many good authors in there. And I'm, working on the interviews as we speak. And there's so many authors that had different stories of obstacles and different things that really were challenging for them. And I'm joining your episode with actually one of the other authors. Her name is Catherine Power, and she's going to be on the second half. So anyone that's listening, make sure you stay tuned so you can hear that part of Crappy to Happy. We'll just give Dom another minute to explain anything he wants and how people can reach out to you and follow your podcast, because I want them to definitely check it out and listen to all the other series on there.
Woohoo! Well, thank you, Diane. You are a delight. You are a delight, a ray of sunshine in someone's day, especially mine, and for the countless others you help. Thanks for this wonderful opportunity to share with you and your fabulous, badass women goddesses, and also the wonderful men probably listening too. And for those who want to keep up with what I'm doing, head over to dombrightmon.com for a free gift, 21 lessons learned from 2+ years of podcasting. If you want to start, grow, and manage a podcast. And check out the Going North podcast too for Diane's episode and all other fabulous authors, because the goal is to interview over 1,000 authors. So you too listening, if you're an author, you have an opportunity to be on the show as well, because my life motto is advance others to advance yourself, and helping others in the business of immortality, like Diane, myself, and the other folks that put pen to paper and publish their work, want to get their voices out there and help remind folks that reading is fundamental. It's fun and it's good for your mentals.
Well, thank you. I'm glad for you letting me know about the podcast, because I'm going to hit a year around the time this episode airs. So got to check it out to see how I can make this even better. Thank you for joining us, Dom. It was a great episode. This is Diane Vic. Aloha.